Good morning, everyone. Well, maybe not good morning to everyone. If you're in the Eastern time zone, then I think it would be good afternoon. But whatever the case may be, I want to welcome you to today's webinar. My name is Brian Ferris, and I'm a product manager here at Church Community Builder, and I'm responsible for our partner ecosystem. I'll be hosting this morning's webinar that will take a good look at a partnership we created some time ago. I'm going to say probably 3 or 4 years ago. With the Aplos accounting software. So joining me from the Aplos team is Alex Acree, who is their Director of Customer Success. Alex, say hi.
Hello.
You'll hear a lot more from him in just a few minutes as we talk about why Church Community Builder and Aplos are the two best friends your church can have. And I just want to say right off the bat, thanks for attending this morning's webinar. You're in a listen-only mode, but you can still ask questions at any time by using the questions feature found on your GoToMeeting control panel. And so which should be located to the right of your screen, or at least it is for me, and type in some information for me. I'd like for you to tell Alex and me your name, your role at your church, and what city and state you're in. So that's name, your role, and what city and state you're in. While you're doing that, I want to talk briefly just about Church Community Builder. I realize that some of you may be new to Church Community Builder, and if you are, I'd like to welcome you. Church Community Builder cares about much more than just software. We see technology as part of a much bigger picture that revolves around helping church leaders be more effective in their role. It's because of this passion we proactively seek relationships with organizations like the one we have with Aplos, that we feel add value to this conversation, which is complementary to our vision and our heartbeat. So when we learn about people and organizations that provide strategic insight on how to be a more effective church leader, we can't wait to share that with our church partners. It helps us fulfill our calling, and it allows us to provide greater value to the churches we serve. These webinars are just one expression of our heartbeat and passion to guide church leaders to a better how, and fulfill our mission of making churches like yours the best run, most effective organizations in the world so you can effectively grow disciples. So again, if you're new, if that all sounds interesting or exciting to you, I'd just like to encourage you to jump on over to our website at churchcommunitybuilder.com. And that's the place where you can check out the features of our software, see the different services that we provide, and hey, when you're ready, click on that big blue magical button up in the top right-hand corner that says Get Started. And once you fill out that short form, someone from our sales team, one of our product experts actually, will be in touch with you shortly to begin a dialogue about your needs. So on to the task at hand. Alex Acree from Aplos is joining me for this webinar. And before we dive into the meat of today's conversation, Alex, I'd love for you to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your role, and also introduce Aplos to our audience.
Sure thing. Yeah, so my name is Alex Acree. I've been with Aplos I am almost finishing my 8th year, and I was actually the first employee of the company. So back when we were just a tiny little startup, I was the first person to get paid to come do something outside of the founding team. So I've been around since the beginning, back when we had 20 customers, literally working out of a garage. So it's been a fun ride. We are now a fairly large operation, about 50 staff. My role here is the customer success director, which I know sounds like kind of one of those ambiguous roles, but really what that means is on a day-to-day basis, I help train, coach, and provide customer solutions to not only our customers, but also our staff members that then provide the solutions to customers. So mainly I'm in charge of the support team. If you are an Aplos customer or become one, at some point, you will probably contact our support via phone or email. So that's my team there. So, Aplos overall, kind of what we got in this business to do is provide a simple and easy to use fund accounting solution for churches and nonprofits. That's a mouthful to basically say the financial side of the game is typically not what church and nonprofit leaders are good at. Just as a broad spectrum, not a judgment at all, just saying the keeping up with the data, the accounting, the GAAP regulations, the fund accounting nature of things is just typically outside of people's strong suits. So What we wanted to do was create a simple to use software that checked all those boxes, but that was also done in a way to where they feel empowered to be able to keep up with things on their terms. And then with our support team offering free support, we like to come alongside of those organizations as well and just help in any way we can to make sure that their financial health is taken care of. Because as long as the back office and the accounting is taken care of, then you guys as church and nonprofit leaders, mainly church leaders with this crowd, are more equipped to go accomplish your mission, because that's what you set out to do, not bookkeeping. So that's why we're here.
Yeah, excellent. So, Alex, part of what I heard there, based on your length of employment, the fact that you are the first employee of Aplos, what I'm hearing is that you're a subject matter expert when it comes to accounting practices and the Aplos software. So I want to hear from you, from where you sit within the Aplos organization. Why are Church Community Builder and Aplos the two best friends anyone could have?
I think it's because we pair nicely for much different but needed feature sets. So Church Community Builder, in my opinion, is unrivaled in their ability to provide the church management side of software. So keeping up with donations, keeping up with groups and teams and that kind of management, you guys really are leading the pack with that type of functionality. And that is something that is extremely needed for any church. But then there's this other side of the coin, which is the kind of the financial side. A lot of systems will try to do both, but mainly what we've decided to focus on is that kind of financial side of things. So where we can help keep track of, here's your bank balance and your liabilities and your aging payables and your fund balances and your income and expense reports and budgets and events and that kind of thing, all the financial side of things. The Church Community Builder is then kind of the other side of that coin, which is the people-facing side. So kind of the front office versus the back office, in my opinion. So I think the pairing here is, by using both of our systems, you can kind of kill two birds with one stone. You can have one integration between two systems that keeps the financial side up to date while also not sacrificing the efficiency of, interacting with your congregation and your donations.
Sure. Yeah, that's crucial. And so I'm looking over the what we asked our audience to put in the Q&A feature of GoToMeeting, and I'm seeing a lot of like CFO, head of finance, pastor of finance, bookkeeper, things like that. So I know those are individual roles and individual people in the church, but I want to talk about just focusing on Aplos for the next 10 to 15 minutes. But what is your ideal customer from a church perspective look like? Maybe that's specific pain points that they're having with their current system, or there's an ideal size or annual budget. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, as far as size and budget goes, we have a number of features and different things that kind of cater to whatever size church you are. I would say that we kind of have one kind of main type customer that we always want to get, and then there's another one that's my opinion. So the first one, company-wide, is we've always had a soft spot for people, for organizations that are small to medium churches and nonprofits that just need some help on the financial side. So you either don't have anything going, or you've been keeping paper or Excel records and you just need some help getting organized. That is kind of our sweet spot. So for those of you that are unfamiliar with the accounting side, we have a kind of a mission to provide that solution to you. The other group of people that I think, in my opinion, are probably more so of what we see these days is actually medium to larger organizations that need a better solution. You've been using something and it's working, but you've had to do a lot of manual things to get it working or keep it working. And that's because it's not typically a fund accounting system that is tracking things in the way that they need to be kept track of. So that to me is my personal little sweet spot of people that are kind of burning out on their current solution and are getting frustrated. And I'm saying, all right, well, I think we have something better over here that I think we can help you with. So let's talk about Aplos.
Okay, excellent. And maybe we've got some poll questions we'd like to pop up during this webinar. Maybe this is a good time to pop up that first poll question that asks what your church's annual revenue is. And I heard you say something in your response to that first question about fund accounting. Can you explain, because I'm not an accounting or CFO or anything like that. Can you explain what fund accounting is and how it differs from non-fund accounting?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so fund accounting is the type of accounting that churches, nonprofits, and government entities need to do to adhere to their accounting standards set and forth by the U.S. Really, what it means is a for-profit company, a business, is relatively linear in the way that they think about things. They are revenue driven. Now, there's a lot of gray area there, but for the most part, they are trying to provide a product or service to generate revenue and grow their business. With a church or a nonprofit or government entity, you are also trying to grow, but you, for the most part, are typically driven off of other people's money. Donors, grants, some sort of like, building campaign that you've raised money for. Someone has given you money that you then need to, in the church language, steward properly. So that is kind of the idea behind fund accounting. Is it's mainly geared towards accountability rather than profitability. There's a focus on transparency rather than just trying to turn a buck to grow your business. So there's a lot of like nuanced accounting-y things that go into that, but for the most part, it's a completely different brand of accounting that those types of entities have to keep up with in order to report properly and keep transparent to those who have given them money. So
Sure. Yeah. Okay, so let's continue this conversation about fund accounting. Tell me something that maybe most people don't know about fund accounting, or maybe even that something that might even turn the heads of even the most seasoned accounting professional.
yeah, I'd say that now I'm a little bit biased here because when I started, I didn't know accounting, and I've since gone on to get my CPA license, so I have begrudgingly learned accounting. But the thing that kind of took me by surprise at first was fund accounting is so similar to personal accounting that I think using the terminology of having net assets with donor restrictions and net assets, all the kind of the very like official speak of fund accounting kind of scares people off, and it especially if you're not coming from a financial background, it's very can be very intimidating to keep up with. But when you think about it in terms of what it's trying to do, it's basically saying you have money, how much of it is set aside for this, that, and the other thing. So much like personal finance, to where you're saying I have one bank account or maybe a savings account, and I have kind of my general reserve for if we spend too much on pizza this month, we dip into that, and then we have a vacation fund and a car fund and a kids whatever fund. Um, that mentality of thinking of compartmentalizing your money, your income, your expenses, your funds into these different buckets is essentially what fund accounting is doing. So, in my opinion, fund accounting is actually easier than for profit accounting. Once you kind of get the hang of it, a lot of people are coming to the fund accounting kind of environment in a very for profit accounting mindset. And for those
Mhm.
people, it's a little bit hard to get out of that rut of, but we track it this way in for-profit accounting, but it's a little bit different with fund accounting. But
Okay. So you talk about for-profit accounting and
mhm.
fund accounting. So I know that a lot of churches use a for-profit accounting software. So let's talk about the differences between the Aplos accounting package and some of those common for-profit packages that churches use, something like QuickBooks. Can you talk about the differences between Aplos and something like a QuickBooks?
Sure. Yeah, as a very kind of broad stroke here, a for-profit accounting solution is pretty linear. So again, what's your income? What's your expense? What's your assets, liabilities, and then at the end of the day, what's your equity? Very kind of. Oh, sorry, I got launched out of the poll here. 1 second. Oh, you just launched the second poll. I see what happened. Sorry. um, uh, it's very linear. So it's basically saying how much do you have received. So with fund accounting, what's different about it is you're asking those same questions, but you're needing to ask it for what fund it impacts as well. So if you're saying that I got $1 and I need to put that dollar set aside for blank, missions fund, general fund, carpet in the sanctuary fund, whatever people have donated for, you now have a responsibility and an accountability to track that dollar all the way through and make sure that it's being spent for that thing. With a for-profit accounting solution, that is not the mindset of specifically allocating dollars for future purposes like that or earmarking things specifically. It's not designed to track that level of detail. You can kind of get there. There's a couple of workarounds that are possible with a QuickBooks or for-profit accounting solution that you can kind of get there, but it is very cumbersome. It takes a lot of know-how on how to use the system and the accounting nuances, and ultimately it's just a pain to keep up with. So if you have the option of using a software that has been specifically designed to track money the way that your organization needs to track money, or something else, and then making it work, I would suggest go with the thing that's been designed to do it the right way the first time. you know, so now, to be clear,
Yeah.
the QuickBooks and other for-profit accounting solutions, there's nothing against them. They are fantastic. QuickBooks is unparalleled in its ability to do for-profit accounting software. It's just for a church or a nonprofit, someone that needs to track, cash balances by fund. It's just that's where it breaks down. It's just super hard to keep up with, and you're going to have a lot of extra work in manipulating the data to be able to produce the reports that you need for your board or elder group or congregation or bank or whoever needs them.
Right. And I think in having previous discussions with you and other members of your team, that was always um, one of the big value adds for me personally, that I saw in the church using some package like Aplos, is the fact that it's much less cumbersome to create those reports and kind of mold this for-profit accounting package into a nonprofit whole. It's like putting a square peg into a round hole.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, those are good. So there's been a couple of questions already coming in about QuickBooks and the Aplos software, and we are going to get to an Aplos software demo. That's the second half of this webinar, and we'll be starting that in just maybe 5 or 10 minutes. So, okay, so let's talk about payroll and HR type functions. What do you say to that church that says, this sounds great, but we need payroll features too?
Yeah, I would say to them that we have a couple of different ways to accomplish that. There is a way to import journal entries. So if you have a payroll package that you like, see if they can export data into a format that could then be massaged into our import format to keep payroll up to date. We also have a couple of different peripheral options that we built importer paths for. But I would say if you're going to do it, the easiest and the best way would be to integrate with our other partner, Gusto. Gusto does HR and payroll better than we ever will, so we just decided to partner with them, much like Church Community Builder. Why reinvent the wheel when someone else is doing it great? So we've linked with them. They, to my knowledge, are very comparable on pricing. They, I think, provide the software up to organizations of 100 employees. I think they might go a little bit bigger, but I might have to double check. But then all of the integration is seamless. So when you link up with their payroll, there's one page of settings that you'd have to go through in Aplos to kind of map everything out, different payroll categories to what expense accounts you want them to hit on the accounting side. And then once that's done, then you just come in every 2 weeks or month whenever you run payroll, click import, and it dumps into the system and keeps everything up to date. So yeah, Gusto is by far the recommended path on that side of things.
Okay, excellent. So I know Aplos uses terms like funds and tags. Can you explain what each of those are and how they're different from each other?
Sure. Yeah. So a fund, the way that the kind of official guidance on what a fund is, as far as like official like IRS GAAP talk, is it's a self-balancing set of accounts. So a fund, if you think about it, is kind of like its own little mini organization within your larger total. So you can see a balance sheet, income statement, transaction list, budget by fund, or you can view it for the entire organization. So a fund is very, very comprehensive in what it tracks. A tag is what we use to track more detail on the income and expense side. So if you're recording a transaction and you want to track that it hit this income account or expense account, this fund, and then also something like a department, an event, a project, a missions trip, a fundraiser, something like that, that is typically a little bit more temporal and doesn't necessarily hold a balance. You just want to be able to kind of quickly filter by it on a report. That is essentially what a tag is used for, just more detail on your reports. For those of you who are familiar with QuickBooks, the concept of what a class is in QuickBooks is essentially the exact same thing as what a tag is in Aplos. So if you're coming from that terminology or mindset, tag equals class, it does basically the same thing.
Okay, great. So what I want to do now is transition into the Aplos software demo / integration portion of today's webinar. And Alex, just so you know, I'm going to go ahead and launch this last poll. I know it kind of messes with your screen a little bit.
Oh,
So,
no problem.
so show us what you have prepared, and I'm just going to let you kind of take it and run from here for the next 10 minutes or so.
Sure. With any accounting package, there's kind of three primary functions that you're doing. You're setting up accounts to then enter transactions and then pull reports. The whole purpose of accounting is to be able to answer questions on your financial health. How much money do you have? How much money did you make? How much money do you have to spend in this thing? What's your budget? How are you doing compared to your budget? How much do you owe people? Those are all financial related questions that then are answered by reports from your accounting system. But reports can't be driven without transactions, and transactions can't be entered without accounts. So accounts, transactions, reports, kind of the three building blocks of any accounting system. So when you come into Aplos, up here at the top, there's some different tabs. Fund accounting is where most of our features lie here. So in the account list is where you would create those accounts. So I can create my funds, I can create my assets, liabilities, income, expenses. I can create all of the categories that I need here to eventually go over here to the transactions page, and then enter those transactions. Eventually what you get to is the need to pull reports. So over here in the reports section, this is where we can start to differentiate ourselves based on for-profit versus fund accounting systems. Is you can run the standard financial reports, budget to actual, income statement, balance sheet, trial balance, bank reconciliation, those things. But then you can also do them by fund. So let's run a balance sheet by fund. So in my organization, I have a general fund, missions fund, building fund, and then I think I also have one more. Special gift fund, and then I'm going to add the total in here. So what this is doing is it's basically showing you, if you were to just look at this right-hand column, this is the balance sheet, and a similar report can be populated for the income statement. This is your balance sheet overall. So overall, there is $38,379 in this checking account. So that is my overall balance. When I go to the check register, that is essentially what I will see is here's 40 grand in this account. But with fund accounting, I want to know out of that 40 grand, how much is set aside for funds 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is now where I can see that kind of parse out. So I can run a balance sheet for my special gifts fund or my building fund or my missions or general fund individually, but then I can also see how they then roll up into the total of the overall organization's balance sheet. Same kind of thing with the income statement. Let's look at that one. So I'm going to run this, add all my funds in here. Then I'm going to add the total column as well. So now I can see for this period, this date range, I'm looking at an income statement. So income accounts, expense accounts, all the way down to my net income for each one of my funds as a column, and then my overall total. Now, this kind of grid format to me is just it's helpful to just kind of see how the fund accounting breaks down to be able to ensure that, I have $900 worth of income, but that might be spread across different funds like so. So this is what I typically recommend customers look at if you're wanting a kind of comprehensive snapshot of your organization's reports. But you can also do these kind of one-off. So if I just wanted to see, for instance, my missions fund income statement, then I can play with the filters here and then remove the total. And there you go. So there's just that one fund's financial statement.
Wow,
So
that's awesome. I'm just going to interrupt for a quick second. Carol had a really good question, and it's important to ask it here. She wants to know how many funds can be set up.
There is no limit to the number of funds. I would say the fact that you're asking the question might mean that you are scared of the number of funds that you need to add into a system. There's no limit. The only thing that I would say here is the only limit that we have is kind of user interface limits. So when you create a fund here, it adds to this list. It also adds to the equity section. When you enter a transaction, there's a drop-down list. So here's your drop-down list of funds. So the more funds you have, the longer the list gets. It's basically the answer. I've imported and worked with charts of accounts that have hundreds of funds. So I would say don't worry about the limit. There is no technical limit. It just kind of becomes more cumbersome to use, if that makes sense. And same with a report too. If you're then wanting to add a report that then has 100 columns, you won't be able to print it after like 6. So it would just mean that most of your kind of comparative reporting would then need to be downloaded into an Excel template, which all of our reports can be downloaded into Excel for further review if needed.
Okay. So one other question, and then I'll let you continue on with your demo. But Bonnie asked, on the balance sheet, can you see monthly activity as well?
On the balance sheet, there's no activity on the balance sheet. So the balance sheet is mainly just a snapshot as of a day and time. However, the income statement by fund, the other report that I was looking at here, is an activity-based report. So this is saying within this time frame, and these time frames are customizable. You can do custom or one of these preset options. It's going to show you income and expense. Let me do a bigger date range here. Let's do this year to date. So here is all of my, general fund, missions and building fund income and expenses. And then down here, it has your net income. And then this is where it ties into the balance sheet. On this report, there's this summary at the bottom, which is saying this fund, general fund, at the beginning of this period, so really as of 12/31/18, had a fund balance of $181,600. And then you have the net income here. And then you have other fund balance movements, which is things like fund transfers. If you wanted to move money from one fund to the other, you already have that money. So it's not income or expense, it's just shifting around. This would include those types of transactions. So you can see there's negative 9,000 and 9,000 here. So at some point there was a fund transfer from missions fund to general fund. So that's denoting those things here, all leading up to what is your ending fund balance as of the end of the period. So this 197,000 would then correlate with my balance sheet as of 12/31. This beginning balance sheet figure here would correlate with my balance sheet as of the day before this, 12/31/18. So that was a long-winded answer to balance sheet won't show any activity, but the income statement by fund will show kind of both. It's going to show you two different balance sheets and the activity that then drives the difference between the two.
Excellent. Okay, so my apologies for kind of cutting in there. I'll probably do it again, but feel free.
Yeah, it's fine with me. Yeah, so I kind of skipped a rock through kind of those three, again, main areas. So you have your accounts, which you then use in transactions, which you then use to pull reports. So that's kind of the three. Now, outside of that, there's a lot of functionality. So even within just the accounts setup, you can set up accounts and funds here. You can also create the tags here. So this is where you can create those kind of, class equivalents of other stuff that you want to track. Kind of the main like buckets that we typically say is it's events, fundraisers, and departments, but that can be renamed into anything, ministries, missions trips, anything that you need there. So if you need any of these tags, this is where you would manage those things. You can also set up your starting balances. So if you wanted to say, I'm going to start using Aplos as of August 1st, then whenever you have the balances that you have in your account as of August 1st, you can enter those to get started. You can enter a budget. You can set up 1099s and segments. So there's a lot of customization here for your kind of foundation before you get started with actual entering of transactions. And then on the transaction side, you have the register, which is where you would record most transactions that end up impacting one of your bank or credit card accounts. So you can select those here, and then I would just enter a transaction like so. And the way that we accomplish the fund accounting too is with every single transaction, you're picking at least one account and at least one fund. So you can see here, these are required fields. So no matter what I do here, I always have to pick some sort of account. Here's a income account, and then I have to pick some sort of fund. So that's how we know whatever you do, it always impacts some sort of fund balance because you're telling it kind of where to go, right? So that's your register. Some ways to get data into this register faster than manual entry. We have an import tool here where you can download a Excel template that you can then fill out and then use that to upload transactional data into the register automatically. We also have bank integration, which would allow you to link with one of our providers, Plaid or Finicity, to be able to link with your bank and download transactions more automatically. It's mainly a time-saving tool and still requires you to categorize, assign an account and fund and tag, but it saves with some of the data entry of keying in dates and amounts, that kind of thing. The other transaction screens here are journal entry, accounts payable and receivable, and then you have a bank reconciliation feature and check printing. We also do have the ability to set up reoccurring transactions as a part of our advanced features, which, as long as I'm talking about advanced features, Aplos likes to grow with you. So if you have needs that will be eventually needed, but you don't really need them now, you can always grow with our feature set. So right now we have an advanced feature set that you can tack on additionally, and that includes the ability to budget by a specific fund or tag. You can always create an organization-wide budget, but if you wanted to be even more granular with, budgeting for this particular department or this particular fund, that is part of the advanced features. Same with recurring transactions, fixed assets, and then allocations here. Allocations is a way that you can kind of automate transactions to be split across funds or tags by a certain criteria. So let's say you're a multi-site church and you have 3 locations, but you received one utilities bill for all 3 locations, and you wanted to allocate that bill across the 3 locations by square footage or something like that. You can create a driver like that, which is then applied to the transaction, which will automatically split things out. So again, kind of just, it's a more nuanced feature, but that's available in the advanced. And then the last advanced feature would be the ability to set up a custom report manager. So if you have staff that you want to give access to Aplos to go in and see their department or fund reports, something not organization wide, but kind of limited to what you want them to see, then you can create them as a custom report manager so they have specific access to access Aplos without seeing any other features that you don't want them to see. And that is a very kind of skip a rock through the accounting portion of the system here. Is there anything else that you wanted me to hit kind of maybe in more detail or?
Yeah, so do you have a test account that is integrated with Church Community Builder?
I looked at one yesterday, but I do not have the ability to do it here. But what I can show you here is if you go to this is a little settings gear here. If you go to the partners page, then there's a couple of different options here, Church Community Builder being one of them. You would click Link My Account. And then that goes through a pretty basic, we have a whole support article on what the setup process is like. It'll probably take 5 or 10 minutes to do, but you basically log in and attach your CCB data here and then submit. And so then what happens is over on the donation side, you would come here and there would be a way to, or the contribution side, there would be a button here that says retrieve from Church Community Builder. You'd click that and then it would bring over the batch detail from Church Community Builder. And then you would essentially say, there's, I forget, what's the terminology on, do you guys call it a chart of accounts or do you call it?
Yeah, COA.
Okay,
yeah,
COA. So your COA on the Church Community Builder side would then be basically mapped to a purpose in Aplos. Purposes are kind of what we use categorically to record donations. So you would say that the purpose here in Aplos that then is pointed to this fund, this account, that kind of thing, is linked to this Church Community Builder COA category. So once you have that mapped, then for any donations then forward, you just click retrieve from Church Community Builder. It would bring back a list of batches and you'd click import and then it knows how to dump it in. So then it would just flow into the accounting automatically. Again, we have some support articles that go through that. First, goes through the initial setup process and then also goes through the kind of the usage aspect of it as well.
Okay, so I want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. Purposes in Aplos equal COA categories in Church Community Builder, and there's a way to link the two. Is that a manual process? Like I have to map this purpose to this COA category, or is there some type of automatic syncing that happens?
Yep. In fact, when you go to, I'm going to search for the support article here as long as we're talking. When you go to the first screen and bring back those batches from Church Community Builder, it's going to say, hey, we recognized some categories that we don't know where to point. So here's a list of basically your COA from CCB. So then what you do is you say, okay, this category, I'm going to map to this Aplos purpose and then save it. And so now it knows that whenever it sees this category from Church Community Builder, it knows to use this purpose on the Aplos side. So then once all of that is mapped, there's kind of like one initial mapping process that you need to go through. Unless you're constantly changing categories on the Church Community Builder side, then you'll need to keep up with it. But if nothing changes, then you'd map it once. And then once it's all mapped, then with every batch that comes in from there forward, it doesn't ask, it just knows where to point things and then downloads automatically.
Okay, great. So let's talk about purposes since we're on the screen. Chubb has a question that he asked, and he says, how do purposes relate to tags and accounts and funds? Is there some type of correlation?
Yep. Yeah, that's a great question. So a purpose in Aplos is linked to an account, fund, and tag. So, for instance, here is my get out of here, my general donations purpose. So if I click on this, this is then linked to the income account 4000, the general fund, and then I can also apply a tag here if I wanted to, and then click save. So basically, what's happening is let's say it's all been mapped. As you import a church community builder donation that uses a COA category from that system, it comes over to Aplos, looks at the purpose. The purpose then knows how to point it across the account, fund, and tag that you want it to hit. So as soon as you integrate the church community builder side, your accounting side will be kept up with automatically as well.
Okay, so talking about donations, I want to stay kind of piggyback on what you answered there. And Jim says, do individual donations come into CCB from CCB to Aplos, or does it pull in specifically by batch? And do individual donor names also come into Aplos?
It is organized by batch, although it does bring in individual contributions. Yeah, but the way that it displays kind of from the user side is the batch. When you see the batch, you can click on it and it would show you here is the list of names and donations that are a part of the batch. So that way you can make sure that you're pulling in the right data. And then once it saves to Aplos, those donations and batches are saved. So that way, what I would say is if you ever have a question on a donor history or issue a contribution statement or anything related to the donation, I would always say because it's coming over from Church Community Builder, go there to kind of figure out the question on related to the donation. But yes, both would come into Aplos and technically be there. Although I wouldn't recommend using our system to investigate it. I guess if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, and so talking about batches, you talked about, it's batches that come into Aplos, and Scott has a great question. If a CCB batch is modified after it's been imported into Aplos, how does that modification get transferred or read by Aplos?
Yeah, it recognizes the changes. So when you update a batch, it's a different kind of post update on the database side for Church Community Builder. So what we do is we recognize that as an updated transaction. So when you go into the integration, I don't think there's a screenshot for it here. Nope. But it would basically say, here is the list of batches to be imported, and then here is the list of updated batches that need to be updated. So you click that, and then whatever the changes were, it goes and updates the original transaction that was brought into Aplos.
Okay. Um, so there's a lot of questions that are coming in. I shouldn't say a lot, but several questions coming in about, hey, we're using software package X that's not Aplos. How do I get all of my data from that software package migrated into Aplos?
Well, okay. There's a few ways to do this. Uh, so the most detailed way that you can do this is to actually work with our services team, who has certain implementation packages. It kind of just depends on where you're coming from and what volume of data that you want to bring over. But they're one of their core functions is to help organizations do that exact thing. Is I'm using Xero, QuickBooks, Shepherd's Staff, Shelby, Excel, whatever you're currently using for accounting. We've worked with the gamut of accounting systems, so we can help get that data from that system into Aplos. But there are implementation tiers as far as pricing goes on, just kind of depending on scope and time frame that you want to bring in. So that's one option. The other option is, depending on what you're coming from, it's possible that you might be able to download data into some sort of Excel format and use our user interface importers to bring in the data yourself. That one is, I mean, if you're a little bit more savvy on the Excel side, or if the data is not super complicated, then that might be an option. But again, that's more of a manual process. And then the other one, this doesn't necessarily answer the way that you phrased the question, but the other option is to leave that data in the old system and start using Aplos as of a new date. So that would be, maybe mid-year or usually best to do it at the beginning of your fiscal year. The only benefit there, well, two benefits. One is it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to translate the data. Any accounting system is going to be different from all of the other ones. So even if you went from Xero to QuickBooks, there would be nuances there. There's differences there. They're both accounting systems, but the way that you do things in each software is a little bit different. Coming from a for-profit, potentially accounting system to a fund accounting system, you might have done things in your chart of accounts to accommodate for the lack of fund accounting, and now bringing that into Aplos via historical data uploads might then make it it might not make your usage any better, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So all that to say, we can certainly help migrate the data. There's a couple of options there. The other one would be to say, as of a certain date, maybe the next fiscal year, we're going to kind of sunset the old way of doing things and then work with our team to design a chart of accounts that now works fund accounting wise better moving forward and utilizes all of our features without having to kind of accommodate historical data. And so that way, as of January 1st or whenever the fiscal year is, you have a fresh start, you move forward, and then you always have that old system or financial reports to go access for the historical reporting. But yeah, so I don't know if that helps answer, but that's typically what we would explain on the services side is, here's the option for bringing stuff in, but then you can also kind of start fresh. Either one is a fine solution.
Okay, great. So I want to get to Missy Pickering. She's got several questions about how the integration looks and works, as well as some questions on purposes. So first of all, I want to just point out, although we aren't looking at an account that's integrated with Church Community Builder, Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, but Missy can contact Aplos directly, and one of your account execs or sales reps, I'm not sure what you guys call them, shout out to you, Jordan. I saw you on the line. So, but Missy can contact one of your sales reps and they can show her the integrate or anyone the integration. Is that correct?
Yep, and we even have some, just for the sake of the webinar, we have some customers that have opted into, being examples of showing how that integration works. But for, 200 sets of eyes, we opted to not use their account just for privacy's sake. Right. But that would be something that we would be able to show, yes, in a more specific one-on-one demo. But yeah.
Okay, so the second half to her questions, we're still just some confusion around purposes. She's asking specifically, are they created initially in Aplos before the integration, or what's that process?
Mm-hmm. So kind of what a purpose is outside of even Church Community Builder was the way that our system kind of tied the donation side of Aplos with the accounting side of Aplos. A long time ago, years ago, when people were recording donations, we used to require them to pick an income account and a fund, which if you're only using Aplos for donations tracking, feels weird to set up half of a chart of accounts to do that. So we opted with calling it a purpose. A purpose then was linked to income accounts and funds to make sure that both sides of the camp were kept up to date automatically. So that's kind of what a purpose is it's kind of like a secondary categorical listing for the donation side. So when you create a brand new Aplos account, we start you with a couple of just stock templated purposes. But then once you create your chart of accounts, the next thing that you would probably want to do is go set up your purposes, which would then kind of mirror your chart of accounts and link back to it. So that way, when you record donations, it keeps the accounting data up to date. To answer your question as far as the Church Community Builder integration goes, when you first link it, it's going to say, here are all the categories that you don't have linked to a purpose in Aplos. And I'll double check this, but I'm pretty sure you could just create the purposes on the fly. So if you don't already have purposes there, you can create them from the integration screen and then just link them with whatever income account fund tag that you want them to hit on the accounting side. And then that would update your purposes list.
Okay.
You can also, there's an import tool for purposes as well. So if you wanted to kind of map these things out in Excel, then you can use our upload template here to bring in purposes in bulk.
Okay, that's fantastic. So several questions revolving around pricing and the Gusto integration. Can you speak to, I'm not sure how your pricing works, so.
Yeah, let me get there for you. So all of these pricing breakdowns are going to be on our website, aplos.com. Up at the top, if you click on pricing, it breaks it down into our kind of three main buckets here: starting, growing, and established. Most organizations register into this growing package, which includes 3 to 5 users, 501 to 2,000 contacts, phone and email support, as well as our partner integrations, including Church Community Builder. We do have a tier lower than that called starting, but that does not include the partner integrations like Church Community Builder, so it would at least be this tier that would be required. And then there's established. If you need more users, this is the 6 to 10 user option, 2,000 to 5,000 contacts. And then there's a larger quote here, which you would work with our sales team to get a custom quote for, which would be anything over 10 users or 5,000 contacts. Any one of these tiers is the kind of base software. And then whatever tier you're in here, whatever tier you choose here is can also be upgraded to include advanced accounting. So that is an additional kind of tack on. And if you are interested in the advanced accounting feature set, again, including budget by fund or tags, multiple tag categories to track departments, projects, campaigns, fundraisers, that kind of thing, custom role permissions, automated entries, recurring transactions, fixed assets, all that stuff, you can request a demo here, and one of our salespeople, account executives, as we call them, will be in contact to show you around those features. And mainly what they do is they try to tailor the solution. I know that sounds like, yeah, that's what salespeople do. But for the most part, our account executives are very keen on listening to who are you? What does your organization do? What does your church do? What's the size? What's the need? What's the future look like for you? Do you want to go multi-site? Are you planning to grow? Are you restructuring things? Like, what's happening? And then they will recommend what the right kind of feature set would be to accomplish that, or at least set you up for success in the future. And then you can kind of dialogue with them on what features and pricing works best for you.
Okay, so I'm looking at your pricing here, and I know that this is maybe the elephant in the room as far as our attendees go, but they're looking at this and saying, well, this is more expensive than QuickBooks. Why should I move? What's the value add that Aplos has for me as opposed to using something cheaper like QuickBooks?
Yeah, I'd say that using the cheaper option, just be prepared to do more work, and that's not a rebuke necessarily. It's mainly just a truth to where. So we're $80 a month if paid annually, right? So $80 a month. QuickBooks, they just raised their prices too, so be wary of that. I'm not even sure what they cost anymore, but they're not too much cheaper. Let's say that they're half as expensive. Let's say they're $40 a month. So it's $40 a month more that you're paying to use Aplos instead of QuickBooks. I'd be willing to bet that you would spend at least 10 more hours per month doing the workarounds needed to make QuickBooks work for your organization, including the time that it takes to explain to your board on how these reports are getting the same data, rather than just using fund accounting. So that would be my kind of steering there would be feature-wise. Like we have fund accounting. So if fund accounting is one of those kind of open-handed things that you're not super excited about in the first place, then use QuickBooks. If fund accounting is important and you're finding that you have some pain points right now in producing the reports that you need, keeping the financial data transparent and accountable and above reproach, I would say that it's probably worth the investment to use a system that has been tailored to do that exact thing. So if it can save you a few hours a month, I'd be willing to bet that the time that it takes you to save that amount of time is worth the added cost, especially if it's only 30 or 40 bucks.
Okay, great. So
But I
Raphael
am
has a
also
question about.
I'm not a salesperson, so that was my spiel coming from the support side.
I've been in those situations too, where I'm like, I start answering, and like, you know what? It's probably best if you just talk to one of our sales reps.
Someone else can explain that a lot better. Yeah.
Raphael had a question about what the growing plan, the $79 a month includes. Does that include funds and tags, or does he have to have the advanced accounting package for funds and tags?
Nope. Yeah. Funds and tags is included across the board. Every organization, we by nature it's a fund accounting system. So no matter what, there is no limit on funds, how many funds you can have in using fund accounting. Same with fund-based reports. The only report that is fund-related, that is hidden kind of in this advanced tier, is the budget by fund. Now, again, that's not to say that you can't create a budget that then works for a fund. It just means that you need to organize things a little bit differently. So, and then every organization starts with one category of tag, which we call the custom tag here. So everybody can use at least one kind of brand of tag. If you have multiple tags here, if you need to track, let's say you're a multi-site organization and you need to track locations and ministries and projects and fundraisers, those might all warrant different tiers of tag here. That would be an example of why you would need the advanced for tags, right? But generally the stuff on this list, this is all that's hidden, or not, I don't want to say hidden, but that's all that's included in this advanced tier. Everything else, basically everything that we looked at today, is all included in that growing package. So all of the chart of accounts, all of the entry screens, all of the reports, it's mainly fixed assets allocations, budgeting by tags, that kind of stuff.
Okay, so back to this advanced accounting package that says 179 a month. Is that in addition to the growing plan or whatever plan they choose, or is that this is the advanced accounting package and that's what you're paying for?
I would defer to the account executive, but I do believe that is the price, not necessarily on top of the growing. So, like this, if you just looked at the 79 and added $100, that's basically what you're getting at right there. So, I think that is the starting. But I would also say that if that's something you're interested in, our account executives would have more data or more knowledge on that side of things than I will, and then they also are willing to kind of work with your organization, just depending on what you actually need and what your scope is. So,
okay, so there's several questions that specifically are asking, are you telling me that this can replace my QuickBooks account?
absolutely. Yep.
Okay.
No doubt about it. There's not the only. So I would say that the only thing that QuickBooks would have on us, two things that QuickBooks would have on us, and I'm just being 100% transparent here, is they are a bigger and older software than us. So they might have some little nuance kind of features that they've built out over the last 20 years, whereas I've been around for the entire duration and it's 8. So they have more time and, quite frankly, more money to develop features than we do. Not to say we're lacking anything, but there might be something that you have gotten accustomed to there, that's a little bit more catered to their solution. But the kind of two main anchoring things would be, they have their own bank integration, so they control that whole process, and it works very well. Not to say that Finicity or Plaid, our providers, don't. It just means that it's they just kind of have a more seamless feature set there with bank integration, which again is mainly a time-saving tool of entering data, but I think our solutions are great, just kind of throwing it out there. And then they also have integrated payroll. So that's just another thing. We also integrate with Gusto. So if you're using Intuit for QuickBooks and their bank integration and payroll kind of as one solid package, that would just include Aplos and Gusto and then our providers for bank integration. So it's a little bit different of a situation there. But we, again, have thousands of customers that do it on a daily basis and have no issues. So.
Okay, great. I'm just kind of looking through some of these other questions. Let's see. Okay, so let's talk about multi-campus. Or multi-site, how does Aplos, I'll just leave that open-ended. Talk about multi-site and multi-campus when it comes to how the Aplos software is used.
Yeah, that is a growing subject matter, that is very complicated. Going from just a single site to a multi-site involves a lot of operational infrastructure changes that not only reflects itself in the accounting, but also in the the department side, in the operation side, in the internal control side, there's just a lot that goes in with that. So what Aplos can do is, essentially, we have a number of multi-site organizations that use us, and it's kind of becoming this thing that I feel like we're becoming kind of professionals and like thought leaders in, because nobody else is doing it. And so you can use our features to track the multi-site data in a couple of different ways. I'd say that I could probably talk for another 90 minutes just on that topic. So it's a loaded question, but I would say that we have at this point probably 20 to 30 multi-site churches that, at least that I can that I am somewhat familiar with that use us to track the multi-site thing. So it is definitely possible, but I will say that it is more than just the accounting. It becomes a very operational conversation. So which is a conversation we're willing to have. So if you want to learn more, please let us know. We'd be happy to discuss it, and I personally would be happy to speak into it as well. But yeah, I don't know if that helps answer your question or not. That's yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. What else? Oh, here's a good one. Amy asks, what are the ways that non-accounting church staff can use Aplos? Can they run reports for their own account balances? Can they submit POs or requests for accounts payable payments like you can in Shelby?
They can. So you have different role permissions that you can assign people. You can assign them based on kind of feature set in Aplos. So we have like accounting managers and donations managers. So if you wanted somebody to be a donations manager and just enter donations or just do the church community builder integration, you can assign somebody to just do that. But what I would say is a better option is to actually use the custom report manager, and that would then allow people specific access to the system to run reports based on their department or ministries or budget or fund that you need them to have access to. There's not necessarily specific access to like um, only submit requests on this kind of thing. It's like it's kind of just reporting or feature set, if that makes sense.
Sure, absolutely. So we're getting close to the end of our time. I want to wrap up with one last question. I think it's a good one. So Missy says, I plan on integrating CCB and Aplos starting in September. Does Aplos have a subject matter expert I can contact when I get started?
Yeah, I'd say let me know that, and me being me individually, I'm happy to work with people on that. Any of our support team, uh, they have gone through it. It's part of our training. We have resources on it. I will say that it's not necessarily a daily like inquiry that we get, so they may not be as familiar with that as others. But I am certainly familiar with it, so I'd be happy to walk them through it or walk with you through it. And then you can, when you set up the integration, you basically pick a start date. So you say, start bringing over batches dated as of whatever. So whatever that date is, it's pretty easy to get set up and going. But yeah, and I don't know if, I don't think I included my contact information on the slide deck, but I'm happy to write that down and share it with you guys if you have any follow-up questions.
Okay, well, great. Well, so that's all the time we have for today's webinar. Alex, so for anyone who's interested in learning more and specifically getting started sooner rather than later with Aplos, what are the next steps they should take in order to do that?
Yeah, I would contact us at sales@aplos.com or support@aplos.com if you already have an account with us and just want to go through some questions. You can also, from our website, let's go here, you can register for a 15-day free trial by just clicking get started or try it for free. On the pricing page, you can also contact our sales team if you want to request a demo. One of our account executives will take you through the feature set and go from there. And then in the bottom, last thing, in the bottom right is our intercom chat. So if you just have a question, feel free to just start it there, and we'd be happy to start the dialogue with you there. And then for anybody that does end up wanting to use Aplos from the Church Community Builder side, we do have a promo code that is offered for new customers that we get via the integration. And that is CCB25, which is 25% off your cost for the first year of Aplos.
That's amazing. That's pretty good savings too.
Yep.
So
That'll help mitigate the
again,
switch from QuickBooks.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. So again, that's all the time we have for today. On behalf of everyone at Church Community Builder and Aplos, thanks for attending. Alex, thank you for your time, for your knowledge. You've been fantastic today. So everyone who's listening, God bless and have a great day.